Between April 1888 and February 1891, 11 women were brutally murdered in London's East End. 5 of them were murdered between August and November 1888. Despite over 2,000 interviews and various suspects, the killer was never caught. The case remains one of the most famous mysteries in criminal history. Today, London's East End is one of the most talked about neighbourhoods in the world. Brick Lane is famous for its food and its art. Shoreditch draws in tech companies and tourists. Spitalfields Market sells vintage furniture. Property prices in Whitechapel have quadrupled in a generation. Walk these streets on a Friday night and you'll find rooftop bars, street food stalls, and people queuing for gallery openings. But step back just 140 years, barely 2 lifetimes, and the same streets tell a completely different story. The same roads, the same corners, a world away. Using advanced AI reconstruction techniques, we've taken original Victorian engravings and photographs, images that have spent over a century gathering dust in archives, and brought them back to life as photorealistic scenes. What you're seeing right now is the real East End, the one most people never knew existed. Tonight, we're going into the Victorian East End after dark. And I'll warn you now, some of what you're about to hear is difficult, because this isn't just a history lesson. It's the story of hundreds of thousands of real people who worked impossible hours, slept in rooms the size of cupboards, and still found ways to laugh. Stay with us, because by the end you'll understand something that no history book quite captures: what ordinary people are actually capable of surviving. A world within a world. By the 1880s, London was the largest city on Earth. Around 4 million people live here, and a remarkable number of them are pressed into a few square miles on the eastern edge of the city: Whitechapel, Spitalfields, Stepney, Bethnal Green. Each district has its own character, but what they share is poverty, not the photogenic kind. The kind where you go to bed hungry and wake up wondering if today is the day you lose your room. The people here are dock workers, factory girls, market traders, costermongers they're called, tailors working 14-hour days in cramped workshops, and thousands of immigrants. Irish families, many of them 2 or 3 generations in by now, who arrived with nothing after the famine. And wave after wave of Jewish refugees fleeing violence in Russia and Eastern Europe, who find shelter in Whitechapel and Spitalfields because it's one of the few places in London that will have them. As the sun goes down, the streets shift, factories close, dock gates shut, the gas lamps flicker on, though in the back alleys they're so dim that, as one journalist wrote at the time, the light they cast is barely less dark than the blackness above the rooftops. This is when the East End comes alive, the streets at night. Saturday night is the peak of the week. Wages, for those lucky enough to have them, get spent tonight. The main streets are extraordinary. Stalls running along the curbs selling herrings, second-hand boots, hot eels, fried fish, bread. Naphtha flares turn the road orange. The noise is relentless. Traders calling prices, children running underfoot, music coming from 3 directions at once. The pubs are full, and there are hundreds of them, one on nearly every corner. For many people, the pub is the only warm, well-lit room available that isn't shared with 6 strangers. You pay a penny or 2 and you can sit for hours. Nobody rushes you. The courts and alleys behind the high streets are a different world. This is where the lodging houses are. The lodging houses. Turn off the high street, go down one of the side alleys, and the light all but vanishes. This is where the lodging houses are. Whitechapel alone has over 200 of them, providing beds for around 8,500 people every single night. A bed costs 4 pence. If you can't manage 4 pence, there's the lean-to rope, a cord stretched across the room over which you drape yourself to sleep sitting upright for 2 pence. Flower and Dean Street sits at the centre of this world, and by 1883 it had been described in print as perhaps the foulest and most dangerous street in the whole of London. In 1871, there were 31 lodging houses on that one street alone. The families packed into single rooms on Flower and Dean Street were not broken people. They were people in a terrible situation. It is a community of chaotic, overcrowded, and kept going by the sheer stubbornness of the people living here. The lighter side. Not everything about the East End at night was grim. Some of it is genuinely, defiantly joyful. On Whitechapel Road stands the Pavilion Theatre, the Drury Lane of the East End, locals call it. Opened in 1827, it seats around 3,000 people a night, and it is packed. Melodramas, comedy, music hall. Tickets start at a penny for the gallery. For a population with no television, no radio, and no cinema yet, the theatre was everything. People shout back at the performers, they weep at the melodramas and roar at the comedians. On Saturday nights, you could hear people singing in the street all the way home. The Whitechapel murders. And then comes 1888. Between April of that year and February 1891, 11 women were murdered in and around Whitechapel. At least 5 of them are almost certainly killed by the same person. The press gave him a name that has lasted ever since, Jack the Ripper. Most of the victims lived within a few streets of each other, right at the heart of the rookery. Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes both lodged on Flower and Dean Street. These were not nameless figures. Elizabeth Stride had survived a shipwreck. Catherine Eddowes was described by people who knew her as sharp, funny, and kind. Mary Jane Kelly was 25 years old. Emma Smith, robbed/assaulted. Martha Tabram, stabbed 39 times. Rose Milett, strangled. They suffered cut throats and in 4 cases, severe abdominal mutilation. Most victims were killed while lying down, suggesting they were caught by surprise or killed while sleeping, with no signs of a struggle. Mutilations were extreme, involving the removal of organs, breasts, and facial features. The murders spread genuine fear throughout the community. The killer was never caught. It remains one of the most analysed cold cases in history. But what the murders do, beyond the tragedy, is bring the issues of the East End into the national conversation. Suddenly, everyone is reading about what life is really like in these streets. The reforms that follow are slow and incomplete, but they do happen. The Victorian East End was a place of real, serious hardship. The poverty was deep, the conditions were brutal, and the gap between life here and life a mile to the west was almost incomprehensible. But it was also a community that was loud, chaotic, sometimes dangerous, and completely stubbornly alive. The people who lived here left a mark on British culture that's still visible today. They deserve to be seen clearly, not as figures in old engravings, as people. If you found this video interesting, a like genuinely helps this channel reach more people. Subscribe if you want to see more AI historical reconstructions like this one, and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll see you there.